Today's topic is seafood. Found an article on Facebook this morning. It's been circulating all over Facebook. Jamie sent it over to me, and the article is titled, U.S. salmon may carry Japanese tapeworm, which can grow 30 feet, is what a study is saying. If you eat raw or undercooked fish, you're at risk of developing an infection from parasites. One of the most gruesome is a tapeworm, a species of digestive tract invading parasite from the Japanese broad tapeworm. There's a scientific name there, but I can't pronounce it. It's big and long, and it's in Japanese origin, it seems like. Though this worm was commonly believed to only infect fish in Asia, a study published this last Wednesday, and it's in. I'll link this article up in the description of this video. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on Facebook, click over to YouTube. That's my YouTube channel. But now it's being found in wild-caught Alaskan salmon. So the study is saying avoid or be very cautious about salmon from the Pacific coast of the U.S. First of all, a lot of seafood does have parasites, worms, things like that. That's just part of seafood. Most of those parasites will never adapt in your body. They'll never, you're not a good host for those type of things inside the seafood, so they're just gonna get flushed out of your system. But there are certain strains, certain types that you make a great host for, and that will adapt into your body and will live and will colonize or will grow and throw off your health. And it can be anything from bloating to gaining weight to malabsorption of nutrients because they're competing for the same food source as you are. And this stuff may go undetected for years in people and may never even be detected. So how do you deal with this? Well, it's saying undercooked or raw seafood. So if you cook seafood to 145, 150 degrees, they're saying you're going to kill it and you have no problem. But a lot of people like their sushi, and a lot of people like their medium rare salmon, which if I eat salmon, I would want it medium rare. I want it moist. I don't want it dried out. So a lot of people like their seafood on the moist side. So it never reaches that temperature threshold to kill any of these parasites. So let's talk about frozen seafood, because frozen seafood, I believe, is the way to go. First off, freezing seafood commercially, not in your home freezer, will kill the majority, if not all, of these parasites. You have to freeze it at -4 and it has to be frozen for a period of 7 or more days, is what the studies are saying. Now, when you buy frozen seafood, typically it's what's happening. These fish are getting caught and frozen typically right away. You have to look for frozen at sea or frozen on shore. Those are the two terms that signify that fish was caught and frozen right away. And typically cryogenically frozen -40 degrees. I mean, they're blast frozen. So you don't have to worry about the temperature being a problem. And parasites, those are automatically done by the time they're stored and shipped to the end consumer. It's had many more than 7 days. So that right there is the gold seal for safe seafood. And did you know that most states require sushi to be frozen? So no matter what the restaurant is saying that they have fresh seafood, technically it is fresh. Because what's the opposite of fresh? The opposite of fresh is rotten. Just because something's been previously frozen doesn't mean it's rotten. So most sushi seafood is previously frozen. And a lot of people are out there saying, well, I don't eat frozen seafood. I see it all the time at my restaurant. Frozen seafood's not good. You don't eat frozen seafood. This and that has to be fresh seafood. And I just laugh because these people have been eating frozen seafood. They've been eating frozen calamari, frozen shrimp, frozen lobster tails, and if they're eating sushi, they're eating frozen sushi fish. So they don't even know that they're eating the frozen fish, but it's just all done for safety reasons. Now, I've been a huge fan of frozen fish for years because, again, if you're buying properly frozen, not the stuff that's left over from an auction that they're freezing, or not the stuff that you're taking home and freezing yourself. See, fish can have up to a 21-day shelf life. By the time you catch it and by the time it goes bad, providing that you've been icing it down every day, not touching it with your hands, having gloves on, no bacteria transfers, fish will last 21 days. And I've done this experiment before. I had tilapia last 21 days. Tilapia in Colorado, the restaurant I was at, was delivered live. We processed it right away. We iced it down. You only use gloves, iced it every day, drained it. And 20 days later, we ate tilapia. And it was hard to believe, but that's the reality. Now, certain fish have a much lower shelf life, like bluefish. Bluefish has 4, 5, 6, 7 days. It's very, very perishable. So not every fish will last 21 days. But as a general rule, fish will last at least 2 weeks. So when you catch fish in Alaska or wherever you're catching fish, and that fish is never frozen, it goes from the boat to maybe the boat may be out a couple of days. It may go to an auction, then it may go to a distributor, then it may get on a plane and get flown to New York, and then go into a distributor warehouse, processed more, and then sold to a restaurant. And then by the time you actually consume something that's supposedly fresh, you maybe have 7 or 10 days on this, unless they're FedExing right out of Alaska right to the restaurant, which some restaurants do now, but those are high-end restaurants, and that's in peak of season. They're doing a lot of that. But if it's going through the distribution route and going into a Fulton Fish Market, into a warehouse, back into the restaurant, and then sitting in the restaurant for 3 or 4 days, you're eating fish that's up to 10 to 14 days old, easily. Now, when you have that much time for bacteria to grow or parasites to flourish or things to happen in the seafood, microbial counts, these microbial counts are going to flourish within that 7 days, that 10 days, flourish. And then you're going to eat that seafood medium rare, like the fresh Alaskan salmon medium rare, because you want it juicy, like I would want it juicy and moist, like most people do. You have a big problem. You could have potentially have a major problem for some type of infection, more so than fish that has been previously frozen proper. So I'm a huge advocate of buying seafood that's properly frozen, like the tuna that we buy at Aroma Thyme. I've spoke to Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill is the president of the Albacore Association in the Pacific Northwest in Washington and Oregon. He's the one who heads up that organization. And I've had a conversation with him, about a half-an-hour conversation with him several years ago. And he goes, Marcus, we catch these fish. It's only a 6-week season. We catch these fish, and they're flash frozen within an hour and a half, 2 hours of catching them. They're processed and frozen, and we deep freeze them. They're cryogenically frozen at negative 40 degrees. That right there is a tell-all for killing whatever bacteria is in there. And if you've had our tuna at the restaurant, that tuna is previously frozen tuna. It doesn't, and most people, everybody who has a tuna just loves it and flips out and says, "Oh my gosh, this is so good! It melts in your mouth, the texture, everything." You could not tell if that fish was frozen at all. Our salmon that we do is all line-caught coho salmon from Alaska that's frozen immediately when it's caught. So when we thaw this, it has 0 microbes on thaw. The frozen fish is the safest fish to eat out there. If you like fish, you want to look for a high quality frozen fish. So when you go into a restaurant and they're saying, oh, a lot of restaurants do serve frozen fish. It's a very popular thing now. So a lot of restaurants will say, oh, no, our fish has never been frozen. It's fresh. I got to tell you, if you're serving frozen seafood in a restaurant, the right frozen seafood, those are bragging rights. Those are bragging rights, and that's there to protect the consumer for quality of the seafood. So I'm not ashamed to say, hey, our salmon's frozen, our tuna's frozen, and of course our shrimp is frozen, of course our calamari is frozen, because shrimp and calamari just don't, those shelf lives are much, much shorter. And the idea with frozen seafood, here's the biggest advantage with frozen seafood. They're caught in the peak season when the fish is at its optimal in flavor, in fat, and whatever the optimal qualities are in that seafood. They're caught at that time typically and flash frozen. So you're not getting stuff that's typically out of season. You're getting stuff that's peak of the season all year long. So frozen seafood, cook your seafood all the way. If you're a home consumer and trying to buy high quality seafood, go into a health food store, go into the frozen section, go into Whole Foods. If you're local here, go into Mother Earth, one of the other great health food stores that are in the Hudson Valley here. And there's a particular brand that I really like. It's called Henry and Lisa's Natural Seafood. Henry Lovejoy was a mentor of mine years ago. He was one who taught me all about clean, sustainable, and safer seafood. So check them out, Henry and Lisa. They used to go under the label Eco Fish, and they package some really high quality seafood. But if you can't find them, look in the frozen section. Even ShopRite here locally in Ellenville has something that's called Gold. The name of the label is Gold something, and it's a super high quality. I've looked into this brand. It's a super high quality line caught sockeye coho, and they sell them by the side. They don't sell them in individual fillets. So if you have a larger party that night at your house, if you take a couple days to eat it, they have a larger side, which is 3-pound side of salmon, and it's really at a great price. It's like $12.99 a pound for wild salmon, which is a great deal. So what I'm trying to say with this whole thing is be open-minded. because most likely if you're against frozen fish, most likely you have eaten frozen fish and actually loved it. One quick story before I cut this video. Years ago, when I first got turned on to frozen fish, I was at the Culinary Institute of America, and they had 5 fish. We were at a sustainable conference, and that's where I met Henry, actually, Lovejoy from EcoFish. We were at a sustainable conference for Chefs Collaborative. They put 5 different salmons on the plate. There were 80 chefs, 100 chefs in the room, and we all went through and tasted 1 through 5, and we all said we all voted on what we thought was the best salmon on the plate. And the best salmon based upon flavor and texture was actually something that was previously frozen. Frozen on the boat, frozen at sea, FAS or FOS, frozen on shore. Those are the 2 terms. And 80% of the chefs in the room voted as this the #1 fish that they thought was the best. The one that came in the last was actually the fish that had never been frozen, because again, it was already deteriorating for almost 10 days before the end consumer gets it. Now, you as a consumer can't really tell the difference, because you're not tasting all 5 fish or any 2 fish side by side. All you're tasting is a fish that in a restaurant that is enmeshed with a lot of butter, a lot of lemon, a lot of wine, some kind of sauce, capers, a lot of herbs. So you're really not tasting sometimes really the true flavor of the fish, because chefs put on these big, heavy, bold sauces. So check out Aroma Thyme Bistro, our website, aromathymebistro.com. I have some great videos on there. Click under the tab What We Do Different, and you will see the salmon that we serve and all other kinds of fish. I just did a great lecture on 12 fish to avoid and what to eat instead. That whole link is there. It's an hour-and-a-half video with lots and lots of informative information. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, share, and pass it on.